Money in the Bank 2023 saw the crowning of Senior Money in the Bank. Damien Priest had already become a champion in WWE, capturing the United States Championship and along with the Money in the Bank briefcase. He's also been the tag team champion in Judgment Day. But from the time he won Money in the Bank briefcase until WrestleMania, it kind of felt little lackluster for Priest. It felt like he was primarily the tag team champion and then less of the potential winner of the WWE Championship. Don't get me wrong. Judgment Day, Damien Priest, they're one of the biggest highlights and featured acts for WWE and WWE Raw for the last couple of years now. But Damien Priest never really felt like much of a threat. And sure, he had moments throughout the last year where we had Priest tease the cash-in attempts, but it never happened. And it really felt, until WrestleMania 40, like the Money in the Bank was an afterthought. And to be honest, I started to worry in the last year that we were gonna see a repeat of the prior year's Money in the Bank with Austin Theory. I kind of worried we were gonna see the same thing with Damien Priest, where WWE would maybe have him cash in on the US or the Intercontinental Championship and not one of the big world titles of the WWE Championship. Luckily, we didn't get that, and at WrestleMania 40, Seth Rollins, Drew McIntyre went face to face for the World Heavyweight Championship in what was an awesome match. You had CM Punk on commentary, you had Drew McIntyre win the world title in an amazing match. It was so much fun to watch. It was high action, fast paced. It was one of the highlights for me for the whole weekend of WrestleMania. And then at the very end, as Drew McIntyre celebrates and he's getting distracted by Punk and in his face celebrating and gloating, Damien Priest comes down and cashes in and wins the World Heavyweight Championship. He does it in grand fashion at WrestleMania 40. And for the first time ever, Damien Priest was a World Heavyweight Champion. For me, I was excited. I thought the cash in was great. I thought it was a great tone. It set it as being unpredictable. And of course, doing it on the grand stage of them all at WrestleMania was the icing on the cake. It was such a cool moment to see. And I was happy for Damien Priest wrestling for so many years, developing his character in NXT, finally getting to main roster, dealing with like the split personality gimmick he had through Vince. All of that time and effort put in to get to this point. But since winning the world title, it hasn't really felt like a big deal. At WWE Backlash, we had Jey Uso go up against Damien Priest for the world title. The match at Backlash was fine. It was okay. The build wasn't much of anything. We're coming off of WrestleMania. We got a new world champion. Didn't feel like it was the biggest priority in the world. Damien Priest wasn't kicking off Backlash. He wasn't main eventing Backlash. And the build to Jey Uso, it was just crowning a #1 contender. So they went with a hot hand in Jey Uso, and it was a fine match. But it never made me believe that the title was in jeopardy, and it didn't really feel like there was any real build to it. And when you look at the roster for WWE on Raw in particular after the draft, I really don't feel like we have too many contenders for the belt. It kind of feels like we have CM Punk, we have Drew McIntyre, you could sprinkle in Jey Uso, Gunther is going to be on the rise right now. So on one hand, sure, there are some names, but none of them feel like they're real contenders against Damien Priest, if that makes sense. Everyone's kind of doing their own thing. And Damien Priest, as the world champion, feels like he's lower on the ladder. Seth Rollins is also off TV right now. We don't know when he will be back. And surely he's going to be coming after the world title. And even before WrestleMania, one of the big storylines that I felt has consumed the show has been the feud between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. It's been so much fun, and these two guys haven't even wrestled each other yet. There's the build-up and the anticipation for when they're both healthy, when it will happen, and will it be for the title. And that's where I feel Damien Priest is really getting lost in the shuffle. Don't get me wrong, when Priest comes out on Raw, he's carrying the championship, he's having the promos against Drew McIntyre, he can hold his own. He looks like a champion. He looks like he could belong up there with the top guys. But something feels like it's just missing for me with Priest. It's lacking that special feeling of the World Championship. We had Seth Rollins carry that belt for basically a year to WrestleMania. And once Damien Priest got the title off of Drew McIntyre, it hasn't had the same feeling as the big belt. Cody's belt feels like the main WWE Championship, and Cody is the face of the company. And I think Seth did a great job for the entire year building the world title to mean something, to have this big presence, to feel like a big world championship. But now with Damien Priest and the writing and the way they are directing the character doesn't feel like a big world champion. It really felt like leading into WrestleMania, whoever was going to be the next champion, whether it was going to be Drew, Damien Priest, CM Punk, it felt like whoever was going to take that title off of Seth, it was going to be a big deal. And Drew winning the title and evolving that story is a big deal. Priest winning and cashing in Money in the Bank is a big deal, but it hasn't really delivered for me since then. And this goes back to the feeling I had when he was holding the briefcase. The tag title seemed more important than focusing on cashing in and getting a huge title. And his placement on shows on Raw and the PLEs, it hasn't made it feel like Damien Priest is a world champion. Having middle of the show matches, not main eventing Raw. He's slotted in some backstage segments, and he's dealing with more of the Judgment Day storyline and Carlito and whatever's going on in there than the world title. And that's not him. That's WWE's creative and their writing of the character. It just feels like they are positioning this character to be focusing on other things. So it doesn't really add the value and prestige of a world champion. He's very concerned about his clubhouse. You don't see that with Cody dealing with his clubhouse. Cody Clubhouse. The Nightmare Clubhouse? The Nightmare Club. That's it. Now we do know we are going to see Drew McIntyre versus Damien Priest for the world title at Clash at the Castle. And I do feel like this is going to be Drew's match to win, because I think the bigger story coming out of Clash is going to be Drew versus CM Punk. And I personally can't see Priest holding on to that title past Clash at the Castle. It hasn't made much sense for him to hold on to it. Drew is a very big, dominant heel. Damien Priest is kind of flirting with being a face, but they haven't pulled the trigger on him. You haven't seen the breakup of Judgment Day. That could very well be coming very, very soon through the summertime. We know Triple H likes to slow burn these stories. Maybe I'm just not patient enough. And we know that in Scotland, Drew McIntyre, despite being a heel on television, he is going to get cheered. And if he is going to be going for the world title, gotta figure they're gonna put it on him. But if they have it where he doesn't because CM Punk interferes or something, that's gonna result in Punk getting booed, and they don't want Punk being booed anywhere. So, kind of feels like Drew's gonna win that title and take it off Priest, which does end up feeling like Damien Priest becomes a transitional champion, unfortunately. And I seriously just can't see them keeping the title on Priest. But let's look at things a different way. Let's say that Damien Priest does hold on to the championship through the summer. Who's going to be the next feud? If he beats Drew McIntyre and Drew goes off to fight CM Punk, where is Damien Priest with all of the storylines? Will he fight a returning Seth Rollins at SummerSlam? A multi-man match because Gunther won King of the Ring and we know that he's going to get a world title shot at SummerSlam. Would it be Gunther versus Damien Priest? Multi-man match at SummerSlam. I do have a concern for Priest because I worry that the largest story for him is what's happening with Judgment Day, and when Rhea Ripley comes back, dealing with everything of Dominic Mysterio, schmoozing it up with Liv Morgan, the clubhouse is on fire, Carlito's in there for some reason, Damien Priest not having the world title potentially. I think that is probably the bigger story for Priest and his character, and I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing. Like we said earlier, Judgment Day is all over the TV, one of the biggest acts. Rhea coming back would be a big deal. Is she a face or a heel when she returns? We won't know until it happens. But what's going to happen there is kind of my big question. That might be perfect. It might be really cool to see what's going to unfold with Judgment Day once Rhea Ripley comes back. Because the bigger story for me right now is Drew McIntyre getting that title and dealing with CM Punk and finally having that match. It gets complicated once we get to SummerSlam because you do have Gunther, CM Punk potentially, Drew McIntyre, Damien Priest. Maybe it is a multi-man match, but I don't see Priest coming out of the summertime with that belt. I'm glad WWE put the belt on Priest. I think it created a really cool moment and it's put somebody else up in the world title scene. And that's refreshing. Instead of having people also with very long title runs, like we've seen with Brock Lesnar, Roman Reigns, even now with Cody Rhodes, people feel like it's getting a little boring. We got to give things more time, people. But it's nice if they change up who is champion for one of the belts. It keeps things unpredictable, and that's fun with wrestling. So did the WWE fail with Damien Priest, or are they failing with Priest's character and the whole world title experiment they are doing? For me, WWE's booking of Damien Priest hasn't really worked out just yet with him being champion. But it still remains to be seen how it's all going to turn out in the end.